Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy back again with another installment of the mini series. In this installment we'll be wrapping up the engine installation in the 2007 Mini Cooper S. We're going to start things off with installing the oil pan, and I will link in the description the video as to why I'm installing an oil pan on this vehicle. However, if you do have a timing chain failure on one of these engines, you do need to remove the oil pan to remove any debris that might be in there. You don't want to clog the oil pickup tube. So that information would be useful to you in that respect. So I left it in. Also, many of you have mentioned during the course of this series that, well, there was a lot of oil that I found in the intake. And a lot of you said, catch can, it's a perfect candidate for a catch can. And it probably is, but my intention is to sell this car on. I'm not turning it into a race car or anything like that. But one of the things I came to find out was that the PCV system is housed in the valve cover of these engines. And there's sort of an updated version that's out there, and I'm installing a new valve cover on this Mini before this is all over. I also show you how to buy a cheap valve cover and make it look like an expensive valve cover. But I don't want to set this thing up too much. I just want to get you to watching because I know it's going to be a long video. It was either this or split it up into 3 parts. I didn't want to do that. Anyway, let's get to the action already in progress. Eric, is that Honda bond you're using on your oil pan? Well, yes. Yes, it is. Eric, why are you using Honda bond? And by the way, this is a brand new tube. Well, I'm using Honda bond because I've known it in the past to be really good at sealing stuff like this. The one thing to keep in mind about Honda bond, however, is the longer it sets up, the better. This is why I'm doing this first. I'm going to do a bunch of other work, then I'll worry about putting oil in it. Anyway, going to put a bead of Honda bond on this oil pan before I install it. And I'm sure there are other sealers that you could use for this. Some form of RTV. I think the important thing is not to use too much. Don't goop it up. I'm just putting a thin layer on here. The other thing with Honda bond is you want to make sure that the surface, the mating surface, is free of any oil. Brake clean is really good at drying stuff up. Especially when using sealer like this, I don't like to mate it up until I'm sure everything is aligned. And also, especially on oil pans, I try to make double sure that I start them all by hand rather than starting to run them in with a power tool. You might say something like, Eric, why did you run that down with that impact? Well, in my experience, these things are very consistent and they're much quicker. They do it this way at the factory, trust me. They run it down with this. They don't sit there and torque every bolt. They just have something that's calibrated like this that brings it down to a specified torque. Not a whole lot is squeezed out, and that's the point. You don't need much. Can't remember which way it goes. Not that way. So the shorter bolt goes through here. 16 millimeter. Old gasket off. New gasket installed. That seems reasonable. Trying to position clamps so that somebody comes in here with his front end together, they won't have a hard time with it. Everything looks in order. This looks better than it was. I mean, this condenser routing looked different than it was before. This radiator hose looks like it's supposed to clip in there. It's not, but I'm able to fix that. Just checking the intercooler connections. Both of those look really good. AC compressor, the wiring for the O2 sensor. And I'm just reminded that I need to fill up the transmission, so I'm going to pull the plug. I'm actually going to fill it from the top. I got a cool way of doing that. All right, this all goes to like fog light, other stuff up here. I'm going by the wire colors. You can see these wire colors are similar. I did mention pulling out the transmission fill plug. By the way, it says never to fill this transmission. Never change the transmission fluid. When you change a clutch, you kind of want to pull the transmission out and change the fluid at the same time. That's just me. It's a lot lighter when it doesn't have fluid in it. Let's get this final piece in place, that being the valve cover. Okay, I think this is supposed to go into here as a plug, and we'll have to move over the sensor, which goes here. And there's nothing on here that says Mini, but I'm gonna see if I can remove this, not today, and then glue it onto here just to have it there. Oh, well, look at that. It already has a gasket installed. What kind of oil am I using? Yes, AMSOIL, European formula for cars. It seems like a good idea to put this in without the valve cover on so I can soak my timing chain. So this way I can just drizzle all over the chain. That's a whole quart of oil I just poured on my timing chain, almost a whole quart of oil. Now the camshaft. Yeah, we can just go to town on this, right? Don't dump it in the spark plug holes. Yeah, the rest I'm just gonna pour into here, like this. Yeah, it's gonna need that other quart. And this says it takes 5W30. Well, that's in there, but I'm probably gonna have to add another quart. I'm just gonna put a little bit on these corners right here. This goes here, 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 and there. I'm leaving this off for now. This is the vacuum pump and I want to test it. So I'm going to hook a vacuum gauge up to it when I start it up, which I'm not ready to do yet. But we do need to fill up the transmission, and without all this stuff in the way, it's going to make that a lot easier. This is an old EGR tube from an Acura Legend on a piece of, well, it looks like 1/2 inch heater hose. This is what I use to fill manual transmissions on Acura Integras. And it works extremely well because you go down in there and it hooks in, you just dump the fluid in and you're good. The way this works is you fill it up till it starts to run out. Therefore, I'm going to take an oil pan and put it underneath. And this will go right down into the fill hole of the transmission, which it did. This puts us at a standstill because we do not have the correct transmission fluid. The correct transmission fluid is under here. It's on a sticker on the outside of the transmission, and it looks like we have got MTF LT number 4. It's $33 a quart, but thankfully it only takes 2 quarts. But this puts me in a spot. I don't want to put all of this in here. So I think what I'll do, since there's a lot that's involved with this piece that goes across here, I'm going to get that put in. It appears there's an area, a slot on this side that this has got to fit into. If not, it's never going to work. That is on there and secure. Without this, the hood won't open. I have actual mini coolant, right? Now this is full strength, which means this gallon I have here is a gallon of concentrate, which means I need to mix it with a gallon of water. I think the easiest way to do this is to install the gallon, or at least half of it, and add some water. So I'm just going to go for it. I know the system is completely empty, so I know it's going to take all of this, possibly 2 gallons. We'll see. Yeah, I was afraid of this. I wonder if I'll just loosen this. Yeah, there it goes. It's going in now. The air just needed some place to escape. Yep, it's going in nicely. Makeshift place to bleed. This top line going to the turbo. 19 millimeter here. It would be best to use distilled water, but I rarely do. All right, that's half of this. I'm gonna go grab some water and do half a gallon of water. All right, I've used about half of this, so if I fill the rest of this up with water, then we'll have a true 50-50 mix. I may have to put the rest in after the engine's running. It's starting to bubble out here. All right. You know what? I'm just going to leave this open overnight. Just while it's sitting here. I'm going to leave this wrench on top of the engine to remind myself of that. But it may slowly bleed out overnight. I'm going to take this, put it under here to collect any drips out of the cooling system. We'll wrap it up for today and hit it again tomorrow. Greetings once again, viewers. Yeah, it's me, Eric the Car Guy. No, it's not running yet, but this is where we left off. We had filled up the cooling system and left this open to bleed overnight. It worked really well. It's still over full, but I imagine when I start it up, this level will go down. I'll bleed the cooling system out at that time. I still don't have the fluid for the transmission yet. I'm waiting on that. That should be in a little bit. I'm getting a little bit of a later start today also. I had some other work to do. But one of the things I was doing to fill my time was I went over to the old Mini valve cover and I said, you know, it's got this nice cool emblem on it, but my new knockoff version does not. So I thought, well, maybe it's clipped in. So I pried this part off of the valve cover. Here's part of that PCV system. And got this off and found out that there was like a couple of areas to locate it, but I was able to pry it off here because it was just glued on. Then I cleaned up the back a little bit, got rid of the two parts that were protruding down into here. I'm gonna take this and glue it on. In fact, I think we should say that the official sponsor of the mini series, the ETCG mini series, should be Gorilla Glue because I've used so much of it. I'm just going to clean this surface up really quick. You know, I roughed this up a little bit with my Rolock disc, and just, you know, you can use sandpaper or something and scuff it up a little, and that will give it something to adhere to. So Eric, what did you use to pry it off of there with? That's an excellent question. I went and I just got this, basically this is an old putty knife. That's what I had. I sometimes use this on gaskets or what have you. That's kind of why I keep it. But that's what I ended up using, and that's what worked. I'm just going to use some of these, or one of these, to clean it up. This is an engine compartment. It is going to get hot, and this is plastic that we're gluing. I'm going to try to give it every advantage, and I think the best way to do that is to make sure that the surface, the mating surface, is entirely clean. Almost feel like going around the whole engine now. This build might as well be brought to you by Gorilla Glue. All they did was glue it on there to begin with. They might have used the same stuff. I would wager that's going to stay on there better than it did originally. And just to get it done, and because we're here and we have the tool out, I'm tightening up this coolant line on the turbo. I like this little turbo. It's cool. Here's the transmission fluid that I am putting in. This is $33 a bottle. Ouch. But apparently it only takes 1.8 quarts. So we should be good with the 2 quarts that I have here. I'm going to fill it up until it starts running out underneath and put the plug in. And then we get the opportunity to start this car. That pan is still placed underneath here so that as it comes running out, and I'm going to keep a close eye on it, because if it just comes running out, I'm going to have to find another method of putting it in. So far it seems to be going where it's supposed to. And with as expensive a fluid as this is, I'm going slow. Second quart. Starting to drip out. Yeah, I think that does it. That's about right, because there's just a little bit left in this. Fluid came running out just a little bit, which is all we need. So all you need is 2 quarts of this, thankfully. Like I said, super expensive stuff. Some of the stuff is broken or missing, or, you know, person who was here before me, remember, just kind of didn't care. Or they were in a hurry, or, you know what, I don't know what their life situation was, but it seems they were not very dedicated to the cause. Anyway, so that's where you go. This has got to pass through there. We have a new air filter. Might as well, right? Clips in there. Last one over there. The only thing that's not connected is the vacuum pump. Totally fine with that. Okay guys, this is it. First start of this thing, hopefully without oil leaks, hopefully without issues. running. No leaks. Running a little rough though. Not sure why that is. Perhaps this. That smoothed it out nicely. And I did hear sucking sound coming from here, so I'm assuming the vacuum's good. But no leaks. That is awesome. So now I will just let it normalize for a bit. Let it warm up. Let it get used to where it's at. Hopefully that shakiness is going to go away. Remember, there was a lot of junk on those intake valves, and that might be coming into play because there might have been stuff that got down inside the engine. It seems to be smoothing out the longer it runs. It's normal to see the smoke and stuff after doing all this kind of work until things burn off of different places. But I'm going to turn the heat on high, but not turn the fan on, and start making it so I can bleed the cooling system out. But yay! First start of the Mini. It's running good. There was a check engine light on, but I'll look at that in a minute. That may be because I had this vacuum pump unplugged. Just for the heck of it, I'm just going to try one of the gears. I don't know if it'll actually work because I'm pretty sure this thing has traction control. That felt like movement. That's all I need for now. I'm just going to raise the RPMs up to about 2,000 RPMs and hold them so I can circulate the coolant through. I'm not going to turn the fan on yet, but when I think it's warm enough, I'm going to turn on the heat, the fan, just to circulate the stuff through. And if I start feeling heat out of the vents, I know that it's circulated through the heater core. I'm not worried about that check engine light now. Like I said, I had that vacuum line unplugged. The coolant's coming up to the top of the overflow. I'm just going to shut this off. Sometimes doing that allows the thermostat to open and all that stuff goes away. So rather than making this boil over, I'm just going to turn it off and let it sit for a minute. I've got my coolant catch pan under here in case it decides to do something stupid because it's looking like it might. While we're waiting, let's put it up in the air and just look underneath and see if there's any leaks or anything there. I wager I know why the check engine light's on. See all these things that are disconnected? Well, over here on the front bumper, there's an air temperature sensor that's not plugged in. I'm guessing that might be the culprit. Looking good. Like really good. Like not a drop anywhere. That little bit of coolant there is expected. I mean, we haven't really driven it yet, but it came in gushing oil. It no longer gushes oil. It came in with a noise when you started it up. I started it up for the first time. It sounded fine. That seems like progress to me. Both of these radiator hoses are cold. The top one's warm. That says my thermostat's not open. I don't necessarily expect it to be just yet. Sometimes massaging hoses like this does the trick. I just need the coolant to start circulating. Once it does, I'm going to call this done. Once it does circulate and the coolant fan cycles, we know we're done. All right, I'm going to start it up, run it again for a while. You keep an eye on this. Make sure it doesn't boil over. If it does, tell me. You didn't tell me it was overflowing. All right, let's turn it off. I still don't have any warm air coming out of the vents. Well, at least of any significance. Maybe if it sits for a minute like this, it'll open the thermostat and things will begin to move. I just started it up again. I got heat now, but we're still overflowing a bit. So while it's cooling down and hopefully starting to circulate, I've been coming over here to the coolant hoses and just massaging them a bit, trying to get the coolant to cycle through. But this may be a process. But so far it seems to be going good. Good enough to where I'm confident with putting a lot of this stuff back together and getting the wheels on. So I'm going to put the washer jug back up in here, put the headlights back up in here. I'm not going to put the front bumper on yet though, because this is all open and exposed. It seems like there's really no better time to give it that treatment with the sodium chloride. So I'll get everything back together that I can with the exception of the front bumper skin, and we'll take things from there. This fastener wasn't here before. I came and put it in, grabbed it from the other side since it was broken. That finishes that off. Before I forget, I gotta run these fenders down. Well, I just discovered I can't put the fender liners in until I put the front bumper skin on. Reason being, if I want to plug in the fog lights and all this stuff, I'd have to go through and access the fender liner. Since the fender liner is already off, it just makes sense to leave it like this. That does not stop me, however, from installing the headlights and the front wheels, which I will do. One more thing, I came in here yesterday, I didn't show you this to you on camera, but I just put a zip tie in here. Come to think of it, probably been a better idea to go through this hole to hold this down, but this was broken, this piece here. So I'm gonna secure that. I also secured the side of the intercooler here with another zip tie. Those things are darn useful. Can also put these headlights back in. Just going to try to line it up with the witness marks. I'm much happier with that. That feels a lot more secure. That seems more reasonable. Hey, that's holding that air intake tube on. So if you're wondering what I did, I just moved the fastener that was here up to here, and it holds the intake on. The headlights make it look like a Mini again. Let's clean that condenser and stuff. Just take it outside and just feel what the clutch feels like, make sure that's cool. And we'll worry about the bumper skin and stuff later. Now that it moves under its own power, that's what I needed to do. So I get just outside the shop and it died. It just died. Didn't want to go anywhere. I don't know exactly what's going on. I'm just done with this car right now. I was a little out of breath in that last clip because, as I stated, I was driving this car around the shop. I was going to take it out back and clean the condenser and the intercooler with sodium chloride. I've covered that in another video about cleaning AC condensers. It really does a lot to help increase AC performance. I'll link that video down in the description as stated. But anyway, halfway around the shop, the thing died. I had to push it from there back all the way back around and back up into the shop. That was not fun, and that's why I was out of breath. The reason for that, well, I sort of covered this in the timing chain replacement video in this series. What had happened was I forgot to properly torque the crank bolt, and as a result the bottom of the engine spun, and I ended up bending a couple of exhaust valves. Yeah, that's totally on me for doing that. However, it made a perfect opportunity to show what would happen if a timing chain went in one of these vehicles and you did bend valves. So I'll have a video on the removal of the cylinder head, the replacement of bent valves, also showing you how to replace the timing chain inside the vehicle. That video has already been shot. It will be forthcoming when I get a chance to edit it. Now, something else you might have noted in this video was the bleeding of the cooling system, which is imperative whenever you've got a cooling system open, as I had with this engine out of the vehicle. This one has an expansion tank, unlike what I've shown in the past with systems that don't have expansion tanks, and I use my spill-free funnel. So if you have an expansion tank type of system, this is how I go about it. I use the expansion tank as the funnel, so it works similar to what this is. But the idea is to get the thermostat to open and all the coolant circulating through the system so the cooling fan cycles properly and everything else. If that doesn't happen, you've got air trapped in the system, that can create all kinds of problems, perhaps problems with idle, problems with performance. You just really want to make sure that you get that cooling system bled out. And as I showed in the video, I massage the radiator hoses and try to get the coolant to circulate through to get the thermostat to open up. Once that happens, everything's better. The check engine light, as I pointed out, was due to the intake air temperature sensor. I've since been driving it. It is running and driving now. This has a happy ending. It's running and driving now. Everything is back together. There are no check engine lights as of now, so everything all worked out after the second round of repairs that I ended up doing. But I have a few more videos in this series to go. Those will all be connected via the hashtag ETCG mini series. I'll also link them down in the description to make them easy to find. I'll also link in the description additional videos such as bleeding that cooling system and also showing you how to clean those AC condensers, along with information about the parts and the tools and all that other stuff I use. So if you have any questions about anything in this video, check the description first. You may find your answer there. Also, there'll be a link in the description to EricTheCarGuy, which is where I ask you go to get your automotive questions addressed that were not covered in this video. Other than that, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe to this video, all those things that help me make a living. I really appreciate it. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty. I will see you next time.